Hey everybody, it's RSA week and we're talking about, well, what else? AI security. We'll be back in a minute. Hello everybody, I'm Mike Vizard and welcome to Techstrong Gang. We got an awesome lineup as usual. I'm going to jump right into those introductions, but it's going to be a lot of AI and a little compliance, so stay tuned. We got a broad mix of things. Guy Courier, you were the furthest away.
Going from outside in. Yes, I'm in Dublin for the Open Compute Project's EMEA Summit, which starts today.
All right. It seems like we constantly have people in Ireland as of late, so I will tell you that I am jealous. But hey,
I know
I was just there.
You're
So
jealous. You were just there. You shift out, I shift in. Bonnie's next.
Oh, I'd love to go. I've never been.
All right, we're trading places, as they say. Also joining us today, far away but in an entirely different direction, Tracy Reagan is hanging out in New Mexico, I assume.
I am. Hello, all. Great to be here.
Always great to have you on the show. Then also joining us, nearer to me, at least here in New York, is Stephen Foskett, who I think is in Ohio. Is that correct?
I am indeed currently in Ohio, where we just got a Red Sox player steal home yesterday in the game, which is always a fun occurrence against the Cleveland Guardians.
I saw that. I think some of us refer to that as embarrassment, but what do we know? And then finally, of course, we have Bonnie Schneider joining us from Florida, as always, to give us the latest and greatest Echo Insights report. Bonnie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So everybody who's anybody is, in the security space at least, has descended upon RSA this week in San Francisco. And one of the hot topics of the day is, well, the insecurity of these AI models. There are multiple ways to trick these models into coughing up sensitive data. And recently there was a report last week from an outfit called Hidden Layers that basically showed a way to bypass every AI guardrail and safety protocol there is, which may give us all a little bit cause for pause. But Guy, you've been kind of kicking around this sector for a little while now. Are these things fundamentally secure, or is it just a matter of time before they blow up?
I think they're fundamentally insecure. I don't know how I'm not a data scientist. I have never trained a model, at least not a foundational model. And I had to use other tools to do it. That said, the principle behind AI and AI training involves a fair amount of mathematical trickery, and I mean trickery in the best sense, meaning wouldn't be possible to have the tools that we have today without it. That's point number one. Point number two, at least, when I take in this news, is that it's called artificial intelligence. I've started to put the quotes around the I, a quote I, because it's not intelligent. It's a simulation of intelligence. It's an extremely sophisticated one with all these billions of parameters and all that sort of stuff. So it appears to be not reasoning exactly, but formulating things and cogitating and so forth. But in fact, it's not. And so any system anywhere forever, including the future quantum systems, are going to be, attacked and exploited, or exploits found one way or another. There's lots of money to be made there. No reason why that wouldn't be done for a system like AI. Okay, so how does that take us to today? The thing is that when these are trained, and when these have been trained, I don't know if there actually can be security elements as part of the training. And so the result is you have this complex system that's been trained that you can't exactly define what it is and what it's doing, only what its outcomes and outputs are. And so these attempts to break it security-wise, whether by black hats or by white hats, in this case white hats, are inevitably going to be successful in some way or another. And this prompt injection attack, I don't know if we can really turn it up to 12, but we should be turning it up to 11 by now already, 12 if possible. Why? So This particular prompt injection attack, the example that they used, the prompt injection attacks essentially put a very weird, not human input in the prompt and context into the prompt. But listen, it's not a reasoning model. It doesn't look at it and say, oh, that doesn't look like a human put it in. It just takes whatever it took and outputs whatever it's going to output. And in this case, it's outputting sensitive information like information about nuclear devices, information about biohazards, that sort of thing, the kind of thing that teaches people how to make bombs and stuff like that, that supposedly these systems are supposed to protect against. But because of the weird input put in that a human normally would not put in, the model doesn't know any better. And even though supposedly it's supposed to filter its outputs and say, I'm not supposed to tell you that information, it tells it to you anyway. Why is this so dangerous? I mean, it's one thing, as the example provided, it's one thing to give medical advice when the model is not supposed to give medical advice. It's quite another thing if it's an AI you're using in your enterprise or your secret government agency or what have you, with stuff that can really endanger as little as your own competitiveness or as great as national security. And some prompt injection attack just reveals that to all comers.
Tracy, are you comfortable using these things? Because, when I talk to some security people, they'll tell me that these models and agents, they keep a secret about as well as a 5-year-old. And if I've got sensitive data, even exposed through a RAG connection, suddenly my IP is available to everybody?
Well, I used to be comfortable with it. And then, when I first learned about jailbreaks, I started thinking twice, right? Because, I mean, there's actually an application online. I talked about it once that you can learn how to write good prompt injections or jailbreaks to get into these systems. So we're just so new in this space. I wouldn't say I'm afraid to use it, and I'm not going to. I'm a technologist. I run an open source community. They're going to run down this road as fast as everybody else. We just have to start getting smarter about this. Ironically, I met a woman over the weekend who works for the government and securing these models around nuclear energy. And she's losing, she won't be there in 2 months. Her job is over, her contract's over. They don't want to pursue it anymore. They don't want to worry about it. That's what she was told. It's not a focus for our government. So we're being asked for what's happening is the private sector is being asked to start working on these issues. And sometimes the reason why we have government is because government will work on things that's not profitable. So we find ourselves in a situation now where we are going to really be pushing these technologies, and we don't have a government who's going to be worried about how secure they are. And we have to make sure that the private sector decides that they want to spend money in sorting out how to identify how these jailbreaks or prompt injections are done, what catastrophes they can create, and we don't have it. So it is concerning, and I'm hoping that the the private sector steps up and starts spending money on securing these models. And we haven't even thought about, I've thought a lot about the implications of these MCP AI APIs. Because now what we're doing is we are creating, in essence, the beginning of this massive neural net that is really connected. So what if we have one LLM that we're connecting to, or one domain we're connecting to that's not as secure as the others and can take advantage of that? So we got to start thinking about this. And I don't know if we're going to at the moment, maybe a few years down the road before we get serious about it, when we find out that things are breaking.
I'll tell you the part of that really terrifies me is that we have done a crappy job securing APIs, and all those prompts are going across APIs that are fundamentally insecure, never mind the fact that I can hack into the prompt. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Stephen, you and I have been around this block more times than we care to admit, but are we incapable of learning? It seems like every time that we have a new and emerging technology, we are unable to process the security implications until, something tragic happens.
Well, it does seem like we, in the name of convenience and user friendliness, have gravitated toward a programming model that fundamentally is insecure because, the challenge for this and for SQL injection and many other similar attacks is anytime you have data and system commands mixed together, there's the opportunity to inject system commands into the data. And AI systems are particularly vulnerable to this because they have no wall at all between the data and the commands. Think about it. I mean, how do you use a chatbot? It's right there in the name. You chat with it. You tell it things. Hey, I want you to add these numbers, or I want you to look for a restaurant in this city. That is a mix of commands and data fundamentally. And whenever you mix that, whenever you break those barriers down, there's going to be the opportunity for injection attacks. I mean, that's, as you mentioned, Mike, the origin of so many security vulnerabilities is people putting, for example, SQL commands into the data side and then using some technique to force the SQL system to evaluate those commands rather than evaluating data. And there's very little you can do to stop this, honestly. We've been working on it as an industry for decades. The basics are there. You want to do input filtering, that sort of thing. You want to evaluate the props. The other thing that you could do is you could have the machine learning systems, the models themselves, be more resistant to prompt injection by essentially teaching them what prompt injection is and how to look at it. I've seen systems where you have two different AI models. One of them is tasked with cleaning up data, and the other one is tasked with actually performing the task at hand. The problem there is that the first one can be attacked too. Also, the other thing I think that a lot of people are leaning toward is basically non-chat type AI applications. For example, retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. One of the nice things about that is that you can build a system that is somewhat constrained in terms of what data it will process and accept. The problem is that those are also still susceptible to prompt injection, despite the fact that they are engineered to avoid it. I think we should also point out that the current topic at hand, the reason we're talking about this today, is because this was a company that announced that they could bypass these AI guardrails, and their product is designed to mitigate the attack that they're announcing. So this is, in fact, a marketing exercise from a company. That's the reason we're talking about this. Is that wrong? Not necessarily, because at least we're talking about it, which is a little bit more than we have been recently.
I think it's important.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say it's important that what he just said. What he just said about the fact that we really can't fully eliminate these prompt injections. We can only build smarter, designs. We can build, we can do more training and better system architecture. But to fully eliminate them, it's sort of like saying we're going to fully eliminate open source vulnerabilities. This is going to be with us for a while.
Well, that's true, absolutely. And I think what you try to do, just like with open source, or anywhere else, is minimize it to an acceptable level. What I'm concerned about is a relatively out of control market based on foundational models that have been trained on the entire internet, so to speak. I mean, it's kind of funny because we've been talking a lot. I know, Mike, Tracy, Stephen, we've talked a lot about the importance of data in AI and how that has not gotten anywhere near the focus it should have. That includes, obviously, the training data. Most implementations of AI these days are on large language models, generative AI, foundational models that are then tuned or adapted or what have you, rather than people training their own original models. And since all of these foundational models are trained on data that includes stuff like how to hack into nuclear silos or whatever, because it's the whole internet, they just threw everything at them. That fundamental vulnerability won't go away unless those models are retired or replaced with ones that don't have that. And that's just one step. I don't even know if we'll ever make that step.
But having a domain-specific model, it makes more sense, instead of having these massive foundational models. And I don't know if we'll make that step either, but now that we have this way to have these protocols and these APIs, we have the opportunity to correct the course. But these companies who have made so much money off of these foundational models, will they do that? I don't think they will.
No, I mean, they say in cybersecurity, yeah, they will say in cybersecurity that if you can imagine it, somebody's trying it. And the issue in my mind is that the cybersecurity criminal syndicates out there have infinite time and infinite resources and are probably training their people on prompt engineering right now as we speak, maybe more aggressively than most corporations are. And ultimately, they'll build their own AI agent to go kick off a prompt. So I don't have to even know how to build the prompt in the first place. And that AI agent might, for example, reroute customer service inquiries to some other site somewhere and totally compromise a business process, which to me is a lot more dangerous than just stealing my data and encrypting it. That's like you're taking over my entire business. And that seems a little scary to me, Stephen. Is that what we're going to see?
Well, it's a really good thing that we're not talking about laying off government workers and putting AI in at place of them to process all government actions. And I mean, yeah, that's terrifying. And it's frankly true. And like I said, you cannot eliminate this threat. And so the only way to reduce this threat is to attack it straight on and to make sure that you are, doing the things that need to be done. I like Tracy's idea of specific, specially fine-tuned models. Kind of leading off of Guy's idea, there's also a whole bunch of people out there that are putting malicious data on the internet in hopes that AI will be trained on it, which is a whole thing. Whether they are, doing it for good, like Cloudflare with their, infinite realms of nonsense that they're directing AI bots to because the AI bots aren't obeying firewall and robots directives, or for ill, as Guy said, teams of black hats who are out there saying, you know what, we're going to do as bad as we possibly can to mess up this data. Ultimately, we're going to have to figure out a way to make models that are resistant to this. And whether that means making models that are smaller and more limited or bigger and smarter remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. I think you're spot on in the sense that they should be at least more limited in what they're allowed to do so that I can limit the scope of a breach, right? So I don't have some sort of breach that involves an entire end-to-end process, and at least I can limit the damage in some way or form. So hopefully that will happen. But Guy, I don't know. I think, on the one hand, to Stephen's point, it is a marketing exercise by a hidden layer, but at the same time, can you trust the people who build the LLMs to guard their own henhouse, or do we need somebody else who's a third party to go do this?
I don't trust any of these people who built the LLMs. I don't know about you, right? I mean, fortunately, in AI for years, long before these characters came along into public consciousness, there have been the ideas of provenance, visibility, explainability, that sort of thing. So they already existed, and there's been plenty of talk about that. Provenance of training data. It's just a really complex chain, I guess, or complex is maybe not the right word because it's used too much. How you gain full visibility as a implementer of an AI-infused application that uses MCP to connect to a lot of other things, including maybe some agents, maybe yours is an agent, with insecure APIs and so on and so forth, right? How possible is it to really understand or be able to articulate and monitor where each given prompt and response came from down to the training data and the training data source? If new models are created, new foundational general purpose models are created that can claim to have walled out a lot of this dangerous data, and then the entire system from training through inference to, end user result can be audited in that sense. I think conceptually that's possible, but we have a long way to go to get there. And I'm feeling a little shamefaced at all my enthusiasm over MCP because I love it. without realizing this sort of inherent danger. And that's why I said at the beginning, I mean, this one deserves all of our attention as people who talk about the industry, because this does feel pretty freaking dangerous.
All right. Bonnie, you've been listening to this conversation for a few minutes now, and I know you're not a security expert, but did you hear enough that might give you cause for pause if you were a business executive that would make you sit down and think about this twice?
Yeah, and as someone, I used AI a lot and playing around with prompts. I'd be probably thinking of what the hackers and attackers are using in terms of their prompt formulation, and almost creating scenarios, worst case scenarios of what they might be doing. Just kind of outpace them a bit. That's just the way I would look at it. But I think it is a big threat. And I think what Tracy said at the beginning, and what Stephen emphasized as well with the government, it is frightening, because those kind of cutbacks might not feel them immediately, but you will, of course, if there is, which there likely will be, more cyber attacks. But I think AI poses, an opportunity to come up with the most not really creative, but and I guess in a negative way of what the security threats are, and to try to get ahead of it. But it's going to be challenging, as you said, Mike. They're working on this now all the time.
Tracy, I have a thought in my head that I'd love to get your reaction to. So, will AI agents and the security issues that they generate be good for application security and API security? Because once these noise starts to be understood, we'll go address more things that are interrelated. Or will we just focus on AI agents and forget about application security and API security and all that stuff? We'll just go by the wayside.
Well, I kind of feel like a lot of the security is going by the wayside already. I mean, it's always about what the kind of the new sexy thing is. But no, we're always look. According to IBM, data breaches is costing globally $10 trillion. $10 trillion. I believe that the private sector is going to get. Maybe we have to hurt more. That the private sector is going to have to get hit more often before they begin taking this more serious. But $10 trillion, you would think that would make it pretty serious for them, right? I just believe that we get so focused on delivering new features out to our customers that we forget about protecting them at the same time. And in some ways, we have relied on CISA and NIST to tell us what we shouldn't be doing. But when that's gone and we have to start figuring this stuff out on our own, the private sector is going to have to get busy on it. And I think that they're going to step up to the plate, especially if that number doubles. If we're looking at $20 trillion, because now we have not just SQL injections, but prompt injections, as you pointed out, Mike, could take over more than just the data, but their business itself.
All right. Tracy's on record. 20 trillion is the numbers. What's your number for when we get enough pain that people actually start doing stuff about this?
Is never an answer.
Oh gosh,
it's a legitimate answer.
I can't believe you bypassed that opportunity, Stephen. I'm going to say
Makes me sound cynical. $1. $1
trillion. Yeah, I think we're there. Tracy, I completely feel you're absolutely right. Not enough attention is paid today to security. But I actually think that over a 10-year ramp, AI aside, there seems to be a little bit better and closer attention to security. I don't know if we're on the upward curve of the hockey stick finally. AI in these issues are just going to accelerate it. So $10 trillion seems to be the number. It
just depends on how much money we have, right? If we hit a recession, the things that fall are security and training. That's an education, security, training, and testing. Those are the bottom of the kind of, that's the last thing that we like to deal with. And we put money into it when there's money available. If we hit a recession, we're not going to be doing a lot of work in this area. Companies are not going to be investing in these areas.
There is a sports book in Vegas somewhere that somebody's creating that's going to have a bet on what is the top end of the cost before we finally take this seriously. So there you go. Folks, We'll be back in a minute to talk a little bit more about AI, but this time, AI infrastructure. Stay tuned. Hey folks, we're back and we're going to talk about, well, the infrastructure that makes all this AI stuff works, because our friends over at Tech Field, they had was that a 4-day event on AI infrastructure? Is that a record for you guys?
That's not the first time we've ever done that, but it's pretty rare that we do it, and it shows just how much interest there is.
All right. And we previewed this event last week, but then there was the actual event and some lessons learned. And I know that Guy was a delegate there as well. But Stephen, walk us through the high points a little bit in terms of what happened, and did anything surprise you?
Yeah, I would say that the thing that was most surprising in a positive way was how so many of the companies, and hopefully Guy saw this as well, so how many of the companies led with customers and results rather than infrastructure. You would think that an event that features companies doing some pretty low-level stuff with storage and networking and compute would, really kind of miss the forest for the trees. But the complete opposite was evident. Companies again and again and again, we heard this from Juniper. We heard this from Solidigm. We even heard this from some newcomers to the event, like Phison, who we haven't ever seen before, coming in and really trying to focus on what is the usage, what is the value of this infrastructure technology, rather than what is the just the product, like kind of nuts and bolts. What does it do? Did you hear that, Guy? Am I off base?
No, you're absolutely right. There were definitely instances of this widget is bigger than they used to be, and therefore you should love it. But there seemed to be this overall bent, and I loved seeing it from Phison. Well, I wasn't there for Phison, just to be clear, but I was there watching it virtually, like everyone should. But from Phison, Google Cloud also, which was an all day of presentations that I attended, such a focus on the really interesting challenges. And I say interesting for a reason. I think you know why I say interesting,
May we
Stephen.
live in interesting times. Yes.
Yeah. Well, also we did a preview podcast that on the first day that said, should AI be boring? Really interesting challenges having to do with very wide ranges of usage patterns, many types of AI services to be included, multiple AI services, all of these things that create challenges to traditional infrastructure. And it's not just about throwing more and more horsepower in the form of GPUs or anything else. And so the networking is important. It was great to see the networking presence, whether it's Juniper or Google Cloud had 2 separate sessions during that day on networking. Data, we are just talking about it, the importance of data. You have Solidigm there, Phison there. So yeah, all of these addressing how difficult it is to design, build, and operate for better AI, both in terms of efficiency and in terms of responsiveness, effectiveness, and everything else. It was very much of a customer, user, and operator focus.
Stephen, I'm not sure people get this just yet, but it seems to me anyway that all these AI applications run fundamentally differently than the previous generation. There's a lot more data moving around, and I don't think the existing infrastructure we have in place is designed for this. So are we going to wind up basically replacing our existing infrastructure to run all these AI capabilities that will be embedded in just about everything we're going to run?
Well, yeah, let's zoom in on that for a second. As Guy said, we heard a lot about networking. And in fact, in the later days, as you said, we had Juniper, Google brought up networking. We also had other networking companies as well, including Netris and Viz and Keysight. All of them, if I was to pick out a theme from the networking companies, and honestly, this is the same theme from the storage companies as well, is that this AI application, whether it's training or inferencing, running things in production, it needs a different network infrastructure, different connectivity. It has different access patterns, and all of these companies are really working hard to basically redo what they've already got. Now, they're not trying to reinvent the wheel. In fact, I have to say, I'm pleased to see the wheel coming out strong. If you catch my metaphor, I mean, we're hearing a lot about Ethernet. We're hearing a lot about RDMA. We're hearing a lot about the traditional software-defined networking and these traditional topics. But what they found is that these same techniques can be used to build networks that are more appropriate for the unique challenges of AI. On training, that means interconnecting tons and tons of GPUs. And, Google talked to how they're doing that internally. Juniper talked about how they're building that with companies like NVIDIA. Aviz and Netris talked about how they're integrating and making networks smarter and more responsive so that they can support this really crushing new network topology where you have this incredible array of low latency, high performance consumers all clustered together, all next to each other, all demanding access to just a ton of data. And then the final one that I want to call out was Keysight. Their whole product, their whole mission is basically to prove that this thing is going to work before you spend $1 billion building it out. And that can be a pretty challenging proposition, again, because these workloads are just so different.
Tracy, do developers need to know more about infrastructure these days than they did in the past? Because at least as far as I can tell, there isn't some magic compiler out there that, strings all this stuff together for me. So is it getting harder to build apps or easier?
I believe that every developer should have taken a course to learn to write their own compiler or build their own infrastructure, because it's so fundamental in understanding how to write good code. So yes, 100%. There needs to be more knowledge about how, what does AI infrastructure actually look like? What are the problems that we're facing? The developers need to understand that because they're writing to deliver to it. Not only that, when you really understand the infrastructure, you start asking questions like, maybe we should have multiple domain LLMs instead of these fundamental large domains that we've been using, because then they begin understanding the security implications of that. So when we're just throwing, when we just go, okay, there's a model out there and I'm going to use it, we're going to start writing against it. It does lack some depth. Right, the end result is not as good as it could be if the developers had a better understanding of it. So I hope more developers are attending these kinds of conferences. I would love to. I don't have the time to. And I always wonder, is this going to set us up for quantum? Because it's just around the corner, right? Does this help us with quantum, getting to quantum?
There is a lot of talk about quantum, especially on the securities focus. I mean, we heard that from HPE with the ProLiant becoming quantum ready. We also did hear that from basically everyone who talked about encryption was concerned about, quantum ready encryption. Also, Tracy, I'd love to have you at Tech Field Day sometime. We'll get to there. That would be great.
So I have it. Then how far are we realistically for a private company, a large private enterprise, to have their own AI data center?
I think that the point that was made by some of these companies is we are there. Basically, Nutanix was in there talking about how you can basically just kind of point, click, and boom, you got yourself an AI data center, AI infrastructure, all completely baked, ready to go. And crucially, to your point, supporting multiple different models. You don't have to say that it's going to be this one model. Frankly, even Google, who has their own AI models, was talking a lot about supporting other people's models and giving customers the choice of what they want to run, where they want to run it. I think that's good. I do think that we are already at the point, though, where an enterprise, if they chose not to run in the cloud, could literally just point and click their way to having AI applications.
And then I have one other question.
Those, I'm just going to say that's inference. That's largely inference, not training. But yeah, go ahead, Tracy. You want one? We'll send you one.
So Okay, so I'm imagining, I know maybe I'm getting too far ahead of us, but if these companies are going to start building their own AI data centers, how important then is our infrastructure and the availability of chips? We are faced with a problem in both
Oh,
those areas. So is our
this is yeah.
geopolitical situation going to stop us in our tracks, or are we solving that?
Well, our geopolitical situation can stop us in our tracks along many frontiers, as you know, this one included. The importance of understanding that we're talking about AI, private AI data centers for inference across multiple models and all that sort of thing, and some tuning and RAG as well. Is that a lot of those applications don't require the by now famous GPU. There's a intense development, especially in the ARM community, but also in x86 around AI inference that's CPU only. But in fact, there's also a whole lot of development of non-GPU CPU helper processing units, like the data processing unit DPU, like the neural processing unit NPU. I hesitate because I feel like it's a kind of a specialized GPU, but then there's the tensor processing unit that Google has created. And what was that system Google talked about? It's like a 43 exaflop system. And when an old CPU guy like myself sees that and knows that the biggest supercomputer in the world right now barely hits 2 exaflops, he kind of scratches his head, to use Mike's phrase that I always use every time I come on this show. But that 43 exaflops comes from using tensor processing units. There's more. There's ASICs. There's all kinds of ways that the CPU's duties, especially operational and managerial and orchestration duties, get offloaded onto a specialized processing unit of one form or another. And then the CPU can concentrate more on things like inference. Training, different bag, especially foundational training. But yeah, you can have there's an AI, a kind of an AI data center in a box, quote unquote, that Google has just announced. It's a mini sled that probably would fit in your office, Tracy, if I'm seeing right. If you have the power, and that'll do inference right there for you.
So a couple of things on that point. One, HP, Dell, and those guys will guarantee that they will get you the GPUs that you want because they have deals with NVIDIA. So it's not like I got to call up NVIDIA directly. B, though, be wary of benchmarks. Most of the guys that I talk to who are building AI apps don't really take anything other than a GPU seriously because those benchmarks don't reflect the degrading of the accuracy of their models running on something other than a GPU. So a lot of them are kind of saying, yeah, it's nice to see that there's alternative processors out there, but from their nickel, they're like, yeah, I don't think we're going that route because I'd rather have a less expensive GPU than rely on some other architecture that's not really optimized yet for processing inference workloads as much as those benchmarks might suggest. But Stephen, I don't know what you're hearing, but that's what I get.
Yeah, I would say that when you say benchmarks, that could encompass a bunch of different things. I think that absolutely the rough numbers, the sort of, we can do this many exaflops. Yeah, that's just a bunch of hoopla. Yes, theoretically, you could do that many exaflops. But on the plus side, I am seeing a lot more awareness of the point that you're making, which is the only thing that matters is what you're actually able to do in the real world. And so, for example, the folks at ML Commons, I know that they've drawn some flack for their some of their earlier benchmarks, but they are keenly aware of this, and they're really focused on trying to show real world performance, and not just at the top end. I mean, they've got client benchmarks, they've got storage benchmarks, that sort of thing now. And I do believe that they're working at least toward having things that are more reflective of real world use case. But we also heard as well, to Tracy's point, that, and this kind of rhymes there, that the challenge is that developers are developing with an expectation of a level of performance that may or may not be able to be met on different platforms. If all your developers are developing toward CUDA, then it really is not practical. Even if you can run it somewhere else, it's not practical to run it somewhere else. And similarly, if they have an expectation that we'll have this much storage or networking or processor or floating point performance. That may not be applicable when you port that to ARM or to RISC-V or to a tensor processor or something. So really what we're finding is you need to have this sort of holistic picture, the entire infrastructure all the way from top to bottom, all the way from API and platform all the way down to storage and networks. And ultimately, that's the only way to know that something's working, which is why some of these pre-baked platforms, like you mentioned from companies like HPE, as Guy mentioned from companies like Google or Nutanix and some of these others, that can make a lot of sense because essentially they're not delivering infrastructure so much as they're delivering a proven platform that can run this or this or this at this rate. And maybe that addresses some of this concern.
Maybe. Ultimately, though, I think organizations need to figure out how they want to structure these teams because, when I talk to folks, there's a debate going on. Some of them are saying, the IT ops team is going to take over AI inference and manage it just like anything else. Other folks are saying, we're adding IT ops folks to our data science teams, and those guys will run this whole thing. I don't think there's a right answer there, but one thing is for certain, folks, infrastructure you have today isn't going to hold up for tomorrow. We'll be back in a minute.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to the Techstrong gang. Well, since this day and this week is all focused on security, I decided to talk about sustainability and cybersecurity, and perfect timing. Hitachi Vantara's VSP1 really does combine both features in their platform. So let's take a look at a video I did kind of explaining it and the features and its connections to ESG.
Cybersecurity and sustainability. Both are critical, urgent, and now they're converging across enterprise IT infrastructure. Hitachi Vantara recently introduced its Virtual Storage Platform 1, or VSP1. This data management system is designed to meet these dual demands. Its automation supports compliance with Europe's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, giving users better visibility to reduce carbon emissions. On the security side, VSP1 pairs unchangeable snapshots with AI-driven ransomware detection. There are some challenges, though. Actual energy savings depends on variables like workload type, facility design, and the local energy mix. Plus, stronger cybersecurity can require more processing power. With AI workloads rapidly expanding, even the most efficient systems face pressure to keep consumption in check. Meeting both cybersecurity and sustainability goals will require ongoing adjustment as threats and regulations evolve.
So this platform is built to meet Energy Star standards. And another interesting factor about it is it's also designed to have a longer life and be more upgradable than previous editions. And it's 40% more sustainable. That's the claim of it. So it has a lot of different features, AI driven, more efficient, and an autonomy where it knows when to switch energy sources. It knows when to become more aware of carbon emissions as it goes. So an interesting feature, and I thought it would be a timely thing to talk about today.
So all of these platforms are generating now sustainability data reports, and it's another flavor of the telemetry data that the machines kick off. But Stephen, is it your sense that maybe cybersecurity criminals are going to go after that data too? Because, well, I can learn a few things about your data center environment from.
Well, certainly cyber criminals are already going after storage platforms. That's something that we've seen quite a lot of, where they have actually pretty good level of understanding of the fundamental storage platforms that are being used, and they're starting to use those as ways of basically counteracting the ransomware readiness that some of these platforms have, which has led to a bit of an arms race. So it's nice to see Hitachi taking this seriously. Those of you who aren't familiar with Hitachi, they're one of the leading providers of real enterprise grade storage, essentially the big iron, the stuff you see in the data center in the movies. And you may not see it in smaller companies. It may not be a household name, but they are, kind of, one of those, the IBM of storage, that kind of thing, along with companies like Dell and NetApp, Pure Storage, and now Vast. And all of these companies are trying to basically evolve their systems to be more cyber ready, but also to be more green, to Bonnie's point. It's good. I'd say this is motherhood and apple pie when I hear about a major company with their major platform adding things like cyber readiness and better, green technology. Kind of like when Mercedes added an electric version of the S-Class sedan. Yeah, let's do this. But at the same time, there's also the question of trickle down. Will this be applicable to the rest of the product range? Will this get out into the broader market? And are we actually just opening up more doors to, as you say, to cyber criminals who might use these reports, these features as a way to cause problems instead of solving problems? I guess it means you have to have an overall perspective of what the whole system is doing and have decent operational and management capabilities to keep that from happening. Tracy, on the security side, are companies talking about the vulnerability of storage systems now?
That is a topic I have never heard, but security is such a broad area, and I focus so much on the supply chain that's coming through. No, I have not heard that. But I wonder with topics like this, it's great that we're seeing more efficient CPUs, but we just got done talking about NPUs and GPUs. So is this technology going to be relevant for NPUs and GPUs in the future? And certainly CPUs is a good place to start, because most everybody who's running a machine at home, I never turn off my computer. Never. I don't even think about it. I just walk away. I might turn off my monitor, but I don't turn off my computer. So yay that that's happening, but how does that apply to the next generation of computers that we're building?
Guy, do you think people will replace existing storage systems because of security and compliance concerns? Or is it more likely that, as I decide that I need better performance or increased capacity, that then I look at security and compliance as kind of a checkbox on top of that? But it's, I'm definitely hearing
Are you
attacks.
leading the witness? Yeah.
I definitely hear about attacks directed at storage systems, especially ransomware, but I don't see anybody doing anything about it per se.
Listen, the tape drive market is still a healthy and maybe not particularly large, but a healthy and within its realm thriving market. Now, that would be selling new tape systems, but why are you selling new tape systems? To replace and consolidate old tape systems. Storage and, to my mind, memory and cache have become this big continuum from the most immediate, most needed, all the way down to the coldest and the ones that you need to be able to stand and look and say, hey, see, here's the data here type storage systems on-prem and everything. I think that introduces security vulnerabilities as I call it a continuum. It isn't really, but a system connects to system and in more and more automated ways. Sometimes I think maybe you like to call on me with questions so you get the cynical and blunt answer. I think the cynical and blunt answer is these old systems are going to stick around, and there's only more data coming in. Transferring data Stephen knows more in his little finger than I know in my entire body about this sort of thing, but I think he would agree. Yes, I think he would agree that transferring data, even within a data center from one major system to another, can be a considerable, difficult, time-consuming, and error-prone process with all the automation and sophisticated systems we have now, let alone moving it to another data center, moving it into the cloud, moving it out of the cloud. Data is probably the stickiest of sticky applications, if you like, of out of all the infrastructure. So you didn't have to lead the witness, Mike. I think that you're right. There is a whole lot of opportunity, let's say, to layer security and compliance, environmental, everything else on top of existing storage systems.
Well, just please
not
tell me they're
upgrading the
already doing
infrastructure.
that. I don't want to think that, I mean, aren't they at least taking some kind of, like snapshots and being able to do rapid recovery on the data? And secure
Of course.
access. So I
Yeah.
feel like
Yes.
they probably have made more progress than
Yeah.
their software
And I do,
supply chain problem.
yeah, and I do want to add one thing, which is much like security. I think the cloud providers are doing a phenomenal job, much better than almost any other actor in this whole system. It's just, again, the expense of getting the data in, the expense of getting the data out. That's the problem with cloud. But once it's in there, it's pretty good. I mean, Stephen, am I wrong?
Yeah, just to level set to Tracy's point. Yeah, storage has always been sort of a weird little corner of IT. And I will be the first to admit, I'm Mr. I wrote a book on storage. Let me tell you, it is not all that secure historically. Security has not been considered all that important in the storage industry. But that being said, the concept of snapshots, of immutable snapshots, of cloning, of data replication, these were the key features all the way back in the 1990s with enterprise storage. And they remain some of the key features today. And now, to the point that you're talking about, the addressing of this data gravity problem, the fact that it's difficult to move storage at all, let alone to move it in a way that's useful, is the thing that a lot of these companies are addressing. So when you look at these next generation products, including the VSP1, which is what Bonnie was talking about in this video, one of the big features that they're adding is essentially making your data appear to be anywhere, everywhere, all at once, to quote a movie. And that's good, but it means that security is even more important because, frankly, if you can access it seamlessly, your enterprise data seamlessly in the cloud or seamlessly at the edge or in a AI environment or something, well, then you really need to make sure that the systems that are protecting that, including access controls, but also, to Tracy's point, things like snapshots and clones and immutability, you have to make sure that that stuff is up to snuff. So that's why I'm really happy to hear the fact that all of these companies are working on that. And I can say that with confidence. Every enterprise storage company is keenly aware of the challenges of access in this sort of hybrid cloud world that we live in, and also the fact that there's a lot of ransomware and data exposure and data leaks and that sort of things that we have to be aware of. So even as they're building these systems to be bigger, badder, stronger, faster, they're also trying to address the cybersecurity issues. And it's also exciting, as Bonnie said, that they're working on addressing the green aspect, because that has never been a priority at all. You run these things at full tilt and who cares how much power they're using? Well, the modern world needs that too. And so again, it's important to see the companies addressing
All right. Well, I'm going to say this and close this out from here. But honestly, more than 30 years ago, one of the first things I ever learned about IT was nothing good happens when you move data. And here we are still talking about it 3+ decades later.
That was a wise person who told you that.
And there's going to be a lot more data to protect and move around and store with AI. That's going to be massive.
Hey, Tracy, I know you're closing that, Mike, but Tracy, are developers thinking about moving to the data? I mean, is that a paradigm?
I don't think
no?
so. No.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
No, I would not think that.
All right. But just like the economy, it's all about the data at the end of the day. So folks, think twice about that data, where it is and how it's stored, because the bad guys are after it.
Hey,
I want to thank everybody.
It's all about the chips. We got a problem with chips.
That was last week's show. This week's about
we have
the
to
data.
reinforce it every single time. It is all about the chips. That's the fundamental part of this puzzle.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, everybody. Thanks for sharing your insights today. And thank you all for watching the latest episode of Techstrong Gang. You can find this and other exciting content coming up right behind us on Techstrong.tv. Please stay tuned. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow.
Welcome to Techstrong TV. I'm Lisa Martin, live from the show floor at RSAC. This is our 10th year covering RSAC from Techstrong. We're going to have some great conversations all week, so stick around with us. Alan Schimmel will be here, Mitch Ashley, some other great folks. I'm joined by my first guest of the day, Itzik Alvis, the CEO and co-founder of Entro Security. Itzik, it's great to have you on Techstrong.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Talk a little bit about, the launch was about 2.5 years or so ago.
Yeah.
I saw recognition from NASDAQ. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Give us a picture of what you saw gap-wise. You mentioning before we went live that you were a cyber practitioner for a long time. What gaps in the market did you see and go, we can solve this?
Yeah, so Entro is a non-human identity lifecycle management company. We're helping organizations to protect their non-human identities like service accounts, API keys, and so forth. So prior to Entro, I was responsible for the internal security at Microsoft. Prior to that, I was a CISO for an healthcare services company. I was possibly breached a few times by non-human identities. Yeah, so that's what led me to start Entro. So yeah, the main problem we're seeing in the industry is that usually developers are the ones who are creating, permissioning using those non-human identities. And they also scatter them around, like committing them into code and sending them over Slack and so forth. And the main problem we're seeing is that security teams don't really know how many non-human identities they have and where they are.
Devs are working on their own without security involvement?
With no security oversight whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you came on and said, we can help. So are you bringing the developers and the security folks together? Is that kind of one of the main things that you were facilitating?
We're letting development do what development are doing best, which is develop fast and enable the business. But we're an overlay platform that finds all of those non-human identities and then gather them, doing risk assessment, abnormal behaviors around them, and basically giving visibility and risk assessment to security teams while we're not touching anything the development teams are doing. So completely out of band.
Okay, excellent. That's a great collaborative environment, which is so
exactly.
It's essential these days. It's not even a nice to have, it's essential.
Right.
Talk a little bit about non-human identities. What are they? What are some of the critical functions that they handle?
So non-human identities, those are the credentials, if you will, that applications are using in order to access and authenticate to resources those application needs. So if you have an application that needs to use a database, they need some sort of a way to authenticate against the database, and that's the function of non-human identity. Programmatic credential, basically.
So they're becoming more and more common, yet they're also opening a door from a security breach perspective. Talk a little bit about
Correct,
that.
yeah.
What's the balance there?
Currently, we're seeing that for every human identity, like human user, there's 92 times non-human identities.
92?
Which is insane. That's an insane number.
How do you even manage that?
You're unable to manage it without any sort of platform to help you do that.
Yeah.
And again, because developers are the ones who are creating them and managing them or unmanaging them, security don't really have even an inventory to answer the question of how many they have and where they are. So of course, doing risk assessment, rotating them, like resetting their passwords and so forth, those are something that organizations are really struggling to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The visibility on it, 92 times NHIs versus humans is...
Correct.
I imagine we're just seeing the AI assistants are just becoming indispensable for every type of organization. How do you manage that?
So it's the same problem. AI, it's another application that needs to access resources within your organization, and they are using non-human identities in order to authenticate against the resources within the organization. So that's only increasing the current problem of non-human identities.
Is it time organizations start treating these assistants like employees, like humans?
I believe so. I believe that in the near future, we will start seeing those non-human identities being used by AI agent, creating more non-human identities and starting to do stuff within the organization on their own. And they will be kind of an employee. Yeah, I believe so.
So the challenge is there from a manageability perspective for security teams to get their handle on all of these non-human identities, get the developers really focused on developing code, but also managing this growing, probably exponentially growing opportunity / challenge. How does Entro come into the picture and eliminate those challenges for organizations?
So again, the main problem is they don't have any visibility or risk assessment around them. So what Entro is doing, we're able to find all of them and basically automate, secure their life cycle. We're treating them as if they are human identities, like you're onboarding human and offboarding human. We're doing the same for non-human identities. So we're finding all of them, giving you an inventory, so you will be able to answer the question of how many non-human identities you have and where they are. We're then enriching them to a point you know which applications are using what non-human identities to access what resources and other vital data around them, like human ownership and so forth, permissions. And once you have the inventory and the classification, the map of what they are being used for, now you can do risk assessment. Now you can answer questions like, do I have non-human identities with more permissions than needed? Are they not in a secure location? And so forth. And then we're doing abnormal behaviors, which means, let's say someone from North Korea is using your non-human identity to access your environment. That will be probably an abnormal behavior. Little risky and something you would like to prevent. We're going to prevent it for you. We're going to move them to a secure location, and basically once they are no longer in use, we're going to offboard them for you.
Is it also part of shutting some of them down if they are insecure or also not really serving the right purpose for the business?
Yes. So usually when we're entering an environment, when we're starting to onboard and throw, we're seeing that about 40% out of all non-human identities are no longer in use. They are enabled, 40% are enabled. Someone can use them, but no one is using them anymore, idle, stale. And yeah, that means that we're disabling all of them, deleting them, and basically decreasing the attack surface by 40%.
Wow, that's a big number. Almost
that's a big
half
number, and during like the
not
first week.
Necessary and opening exposure to risks for organizations. What problem do companies come to you with? I imagine they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
So what's the customer conversation like when you're talking with a prospect? They say, Itzik, we've got a problem, but we don't even know what it is.
Like everybody is aware. Everybody are aware about the problem. They know developers are creating permissions and non-human identities to access databases and storage accounts and other resources. They know it's being done within the organization, and they would like a way in order to control control, govern what those developers are doing. That's the main problem. Security wants to govern any identity that can access their environment and data.
And is it developers that are creating these, or are there other users within organizations that are
usually developers, DevOps, like developers, DevOps, SREs, and so forth. Those are the ones who are creating them.
And their objective is what?
So again, those non-human identities like service accounts and so forth are being used by applications in order to authenticate against resources like database. So the objective is to enable the application to authenticate and connect to resources the application needs, like storage.
Offloading that task from a developer, for example.
Correct.
Yes, managing that. So what is a favorite customer story of yours that you think really shines the light on why you co-founded Entro and really big reductions in these NHIs that you're helping companies achieve? What's your favorite customer story?
Yeah, so actually just like I think 1 month ago, a DevOps left an organization. He left the organization and he downloaded all of those service accounts, all of those non-human identities.
Whoa.
And that was picked up by Entro, by our abnormal behaviors. So we helped them to find everything he downloaded, all of the credentials, all of the non-human identities, rotate them, like replace their credentials and so forth. So stuff like that we'll keep seeing.
Yeah.
Really giving me and the team, the energy boost we need to continue on.
And the confidence that you saw the right problem to solve for these organizations.
Correct.
And is this I imagine this is across industries, including government?
Including government, for sure. Every organization that have internal development have non-human identities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
wow.
Lots of them.
Some of the stats you threw out were shocking, that there's a 92x multiplier NHIs versus humans.
Right.
And that 40% of them are either not usable or not necessary. So
they are usable, but not in use.
They're not in use.
Yeah, idle.
Okay.
And also, by IBM cost of data breach, probably the most, the best report in the industry, and Verizon report, the second best. Both of them are saying that non-human identities is the second most frequent attack vector and the number one most costly attack to an organization. So that's a real huge issue
It's a
within the
huge
industry.
issue for organizations. Wow. What are some of the things that folks here that are attending RSAC can see and learn at your booth? I know you guys are exhibiting here.
Yeah, they should definitely come to the booth and understand how we're able to find all of them, how we're managing the life cycle of them, reducing their permissions, rotating them, assigning ownership, and so forth. They should definitely stop by and see how they can fully manage and solve the non-human identity problem.
What's the time frame? I should have asked you this earlier. What's the time frame by the time Entro gets into an account where you're finding all of these NHIs and giving the control back to the organization? Is this something that happens fairly quickly?
Yeah, very quickly. Usually the onboarding takes like 15 minutes. We're able to connect like that.
Wow.
And then to scan for everything, few hours.
Okay. So the time to value is really short.
Correct.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
What's next for the business? You're 2.5 years old. What are some of the things that we can expect on the horizon? Anything on the roadmap you can share with us?
Yeah, we'll continue to grow. We're gonna keep creating and doing lots of partnerships. So we're already partners with Wiz, we're partners with other great companies. So we're gonna continue to expand what we're able to do and who we can work with. And hopefully we'll keep leading the market.
That's awesome. Itzik, thank you so much for joining me on Techstrong TV, talking about non-human identities, the challenges there, but the opportunities that Entro is delivering to your clients across industries. We appreciate your insights.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me.
All right, for Itzik Alves, I'm Lisa Martin. You're watching Techstrong TV live from RSAC. Stick around. We have a full day of coverage today, tomorrow, and Thursday. We'll be right back with our next guest. Hey, welcome back to Techstrong TV, live from the show floor at RSAC in Moscone West in San Francisco. I'm your host, Lisa Martin. We have great conversations lined up today, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So stick around. Lots of great content coming your way. My next guest is Dr. Katie Paxton-Fear, Principal Security Research Engineer at Traceable by Harness. Dr. Katie, it's great to have you on Techstrong TV.
It's so exciting to be here.
Isn't it great?
I love it. Like the energy, this is so cool.
It is cool. Well, we appreciate your time. So Traceable by Harness, this merger was only announced in February.
Yes, it's been a whirlwind.
I bet it has. So really aiming to create this new leader in secure software delivery. Talk to us about that and how these two powerhouses are going to do just that.
So I think quite a lot of the traditional security model has been really focused on security teams. And while that's great, and we obviously love talking to security teams, actually, it's not just about security teams. There's a whole, other range of people in an organization.
Yeah.
The most important people there are developers.
Right.
And at the end of the day, they're the ones that are developing secure software, right? They're the ones whose that is their job, that is their mission, their purpose.
Right.
And if you have a software solution, like a security solution that only speaks to the security engineers, you've kind of missed out a major part of the kind of story there, because what about the people who write the code? And I think really what Traceable by Harness is doing and kind of pushing for in the industry has been this move to be, it's not just about security, it's about the developer experience, it's about developers, and how do we merge those two worlds together? And often when we speak to our customers, and obviously Harness is a sister company to us, and Harness and we share a lot of customers, right?
Okay.
When we speak to them, they are the same buyer. They are interested. They want to get both solutions.
Yeah.
And so as we see this kind of push towards, from two separate ideas, developers and security, to DevSecOps, but everything's got to adapt with it. Security solutions are moving towards, it's not just about security teams, it's about the developer experience as well.
Are you seeing this kind of rapid convergence of DevOps and security? We've been talking about DevSecOps for a while, but it's a cultural shift, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of the early movements of like DevSecOps were very much the cultural more than the actual shift.
Okay.
And they still had like quite siloed responsibilities. And actually what we're now seeing is way more convergence of that, and way more, it's not just about security teams. And in organizations where developers outnumber security people by, hundreds in some teams, you can't forget them.
No.
And you can't be in a situation where you're telling the developers what to do. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel good for the developers. They don't want to engage in security. You have to work with them instead of trying to work against them.
Yeah.
And I think bringing those two worlds together and really bringing the kind of making security something developers want to do.
Yeah.
Make it something they're excited about. Make it products that they really love will give us so much more secure software.
Absolutely. AI coding tools. I mean, we can't go a day without talking about AI anymore since ChatGPT burst onto the scene. You're an OG AI expert.
I'm a hipster. I'm an AI hipster.
Hipster.
I was
knew that was wrong.
It's cool.
And now it is cool.
Yeah.
But AI coding is also introducing some security risks.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Talk a little bit about some of those doors that's opening up and how your solution helps to close those doors.
So obviously we've heard a lot about vibe coding.
Yes.
That is the term. No programming, no thinking, just vibing with the AI, just being like, make me a game that allows me to, buy like cities and buildings and make me a city builder game. And the AI just does it for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it. The problem is you don't have to think about it.
Problem.
And a lot of developers are using this code and just copying and pasting it and putting it straight in. And the problem is with AI, security, if you think about the history of computing, is such a new kind of idea. These security events like RSA that we're going to now, they really have become more popular kind of in the last, 10 years.
Right.
Programming's been around for years before then. Right. And think about AI. AI is statistics. It has so many more examples of broken code, of code that is insecure because it wasn't much of a thing at the time, that it's not surprising that it doesn't know how to secure it, because security is something new. It's something in the grand scheme of things that is like a blip. And I think really with like vibe coding, it's all about how do we enable developers to use AI, because we want them to, because this can take, I actually did a vibe coded application recently. I did it in language I didn't know anything about as like a little test. One, as someone who knows about security, I was not thinking about security at the time I wrote it. The second it started generating code, even as someone who has a PhD in security, who knows this is a problem, I just copy and pasted it. I was like, this is too easy. I'm just going to get AI to do it all.
Okay.
And
it's a double-edged sword, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's how do we, enable developers to use things like AI, but also to think critically about it and actually have, we hear a lot about human in the loop.
Absolutely.
Making sure, you're not just coding based on vibes.
Yeah.
You're also coding based on security.
Absolutely.
And I think really when it comes to what, security solutions like Traceable by Harness really do, enables that AI revolution, gets, that AI develop in the developer's hands, get them using it, get them, experiment with it, having them rely on AI, but in a secure way, in a way where, we are a security company. We've thought about security. We know security.
Yeah.
And really seeing, that perspective when we're developing the AI and enabling those developers.
Right. It needs to be factored in, and the security from the beginning cannot be bolt on or an afterthought.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to, the real risk of AI, the real risk of AI is not necessarily in, say, AI performing security attacks or anything like that. The real risk is if you've got developers who are just implementing code uncritically and just copying and pasting, whatever the AI gives them, you're just going to introduce the same security vulnerabilities we solved 5, 10, plus years ago.
Okay.
And my real worry and the real problem that I think we're going to start to see really crop up is those old vulnerabilities we've considered solved that we're not even thinking about anymore.
Right. Moved past them.
And then we're just reintroducing them. They're going to get a new lease of life. And that's what we've seen across quite a lot of security research.
So vibe coding is also a relatively new concept. This is a buzzword, but this was coined in February.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago. Are you seeing more of your work really revolving around enabling the developers to understand how to rely on it securely versus just blindly relying on it?
it's interesting because I don't think there's a lot of discussion about it at the moment.
Ah.
I think there's a lot of like how we enable developers to use AI, but the securely has kind of been missing a little bit. It's kind of not really been talked about as much because I think when it comes to vibe coding at the moment, the problem is, I don't know if you've seen that there's a Twitter post of somebody who's like, I vibe coded an application. I don't know anything about programming in this many hours. Here's the link. And maybe like 12 hours later, he followed up with, please stop hacking my application.
Oh no.
And then after that, he's like, I fixed this problem. And then there was more security problems.
Sure.
Because, and at the end of the day, developers aren't security experts.
Right.
They're not.
And they don't have to be.
And they don't have to be. And you know what? AI should be secure. That can be a security expert. That can be a security like resource that developers use. It can help them do it. Unfortunately, kind of what we have at the moment in a lot of the kind of vibe coding application space is more of like a prompt that ends with, please implement securely. And that's it. Like, and if you look at the advice as well, if you look on Twitter and see developers talking about this, they actually list front and center that security is optional.
Really?
Yeah.
In 2025, they're
Yeah.
still thinking like that?
Yeah.
That shocks me.
But it's tempting though. Like I have to say, as somebody who did this, I was able to implement an application that would have taken, you know, me doing it properly, like a week, maybe 2 weeks in 6 hours.
Wow.
And that's the problem. Yeah. That you want to have that advantage.
The
Like
productivity advantage is there.
it's insane.
Yeah.
It's such a good advantage. And to like discount it is it's unthinkable. So we really need to think about, you know, enabling developers, whether or not that looks like, you know, having security in things like the security in the pipeline, the ICD. A lot of the work we do at Traceable by Harness is how do we put API security testing in the CI/CD pipeline, have it something that's automatic, have it something that developers don't think about. And that's kind of where we want to get to. We want to get to a way where they're using the products and they're not really thinking about it.
They don't
have to.
Right, exactly. But it seems like from a vibe coding perspective, a lot more awareness needs to be done consistently. What's the ideal in this AI era that we're all living and working in? What's the ideal developer experience?
Honestly, that security should be as invisible as we can get it, but still something developers want to engage with.
Yeah.
The problem is if you are a developer and security becomes a blocker for you, if it's you're trying to write code and it's like, no, sorry, you can't do that. No, this has got, you know, this many vulnerabilities, fix them, you're not able to do it. If we have that kind of mentality, we're almost like we're just getting in the way. We're making it annoying. We're making security be the department of no. We want to be the people on the development team who know about security, who you can come to.
Yeah.
We're not going to add workload to you.
Right.
We're going to be enablers for you. We're going to make it as easy as possible for you to do your job.
Yeah.
That is our job as security folks. And having solutions that kind of use that mentality of, you know, the ideal developer experience is the security team does it. The ideal security team experience is that developers do it. There's got to be a middle ground there. And I think it's how do we invite developers into security spaces, into security tools, get them hands-on, get them excited about security, and also be a member of the team who will say, you vibe code an application. That's so cool. Let's run a security test. And if it passes, like, let's see how we can put this into production or put it into, you know, maybe an internal tool.
Right.
It's that kind of change from being, no, you can't do that, that's bad security, to, yeah, we have tools that can do things like security scanning for this application. You don't have to worry about it. If it comes back clean, we'll do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do this.
And if it doesn't, we can fix it.
And if
all the vulnerabilities.
we can fix it together. It's not you fail, bad, you get an F, you failed your test.
Yeah.
It's we will work together to get your goal out there.
So do you see yourself as a facilitator of the DevSecOps movement? And is that evolving fast enough?
I think every security professional needs to think of themselves as like an ambassador for developers. You know, I don't think it's as simple as saying, I'm in the security team, that's not my job.
Right.
It's moving to a situation where, you know, developers they don't have to know about security. They have to know maybe a little bit, but they're not experts in it.
Yeah.
and they don't have to be.
They shouldn't have to be.
And they want to you want to have a relationship with them where they feel like they can come to you
And trust.
and trust. Yeah. And once you lose that trust,
Yeah.
once the developer considers you like a blocker in their workflow, it's so hard to get it back.
Sure.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like, how do you make your developers not hate you as a security professional?
Yeah.
But the thing is, we've got a great opportunity. I want to say that we have a great opportunity to use AI as a bridge between the two and to use it to make both of our lives easier
I love
and
that
to
as a bridge.
enable us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I see myself as an ambassador, and I want to be the kind of security person who will be there for developers, that is on their side, that is not working against them,
Yes.
but working with them.
With them, absolutely.
And-
In collaboration.
Yeah, and any security person who doesn't see their role like that, I think has like a very dated mindset of, what security looks like now in 2025.
Yeah. Time to modernize. I love that you kind of wrap things up with looking at AI as that bridge between the developer, between security, and a lot of opportunity there. Last question for you, Katie. Favorite customer story that
Okay.
really shines light on the value that you're delivering?
So I work in like the security research side of things. So I obviously see quite a lot of security attacks, and I will look at attacks and look at, when we see a new vulnerability being released, I'll look at the data and see whether or not our customers have been affected by it. It's not just me, that we've got an entire team that does it. So I would tell you a story from one of these incidents. So we were looking at a customer. They worked in the finance industry, so really sensitive.
Very regulated.
Yeah, very regulated. And we were noticing some traffic on their servers were a little bit anomalous. It wasn't an attack per se. This wasn't like, screaming alerts going off, panic. It was just a little bit weird. So we went and investigated it. We looked at the behavior and we noticed a pattern. We could see that there were these attacks, these campaigns that attackers were running. 80% of traffic on one of their APIs was all attackers.
80%.
80%.
Wow.
Now, here's the best bit. We looked at this. We gave the results to customers like, hey, we blocked it for them, of course. Like, they were fine.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't that they had, gained a lot of access, but it was like an ongoing campaign. We actually caught them before they were able to do quite a lot of the kind of exfiltration part of it.
Fantastic.
So we're like, I wonder if this is true for other customers. And we found another customer. We found the same campaign.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to detect this. It was for the technical people watching, it was sandboxing. We were able to detect it on not just one customer, but multiple.
Yeah.
And I think it was for me as a researcher, it was so cool. One, to catch it ahead of time.
Yes.
Like, as someone who's a hacker, I spend quite a lot of time talking about the after effect.
Right.
Rather than the pre. But it was just so cool to see, hey, this isn't something that just applied to one person, it's something that applied to multiple customers.
Yeah.
And they're not the only ones that are going to be affected.
No, of course not. It's
That's gonna-
probably just going to proliferate.
Exactly.
You can spot it, you can find it, you can remedy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Great stuff. Katie, thank you so much for joining me on Techstrong. I really enjoyed our conversation. Really how you're an ambassador, you're an AI hipster. I love that, an ethical hacker. But thank you for sharing what you're seeing out there and how AI can be that bridge between the developers and the security folks. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
My
been a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Good. For Dr. Katie Paxton Fear, I'm Lisa Martin. You're watching Techstrong TV live from RSAC at Moscone West in San Francisco. Stick around. We have more great content coming up. I'll be back with my next guest in just a few minutes.
Hello and welcome to the Digital CXO podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani, and with me today I have Lenny Morano. He is president of the Americas at Lectra. How are you doing today?
Good, Amanda. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you on the show. Can you share a little bit about Lectra? What services do you provide?
Sure. So Lectra is an integrated solutions technology company that provides a suite of equipment, software, services, and industrial intelligence to the fashion, automotive, furniture, and then other industrial value streams, including aerospace, defense, marine, recreation.
Wonderful. So we're here today to discuss fashion manufacturing trends. There are 5 specifically that you are going to share. So Can you share what are these trends? How are they impacting the industry?
Sure. The main five, to start with, I would say the first one is the need for better reading of brand performance. Right now in a very highly competitive environment, with with product being sourced all over the world, costs and pricing being adjusted, having, a good sense of how your brand is performing in the marketplace compared to the competition is going to be key. And that, that allows you to make sure that you have the right product on the right in the right place at the right price at the right time. And there's AI driven web based tools that facilitate this. Like there's a product called RepViews that we have that does a lot of competitive benchmarking, so you can see, compare assortments versus competitors and things like that, and get a good gauge of how your brand is positioned in the marketplace. So that's really the first one. The second one is, price increases versus perceived value, right? And this is a trend that we talked about in the beginning of the year, not knowing what the macroeconomic context was gonna be like. But as consumer demand goes up and down, as they look at the value of different segments of the fashion market differently, whether it's luxury or sportswear, and as prices fluctuate, how do they perceive the value of your brand compared to others in the market? And are they going to be willing to pay for whatever your primary value proposition is? The third, and this is one that we see in all different parts of the world, is increases in regulatory trends. And, in the US, it may, fluctuate up and down how rigid they are, and whether we face, increased regulation or deregulation. The reality is that most fashion companies have some global aspect and require traceability and visibility throughout their value streams around the world. So having tools like, we have a platform called Textile Genesis that provides visibility from literally the cotton field all the way through production into the consumer. Having the visibility throughout that whole supply chain is going to be key. So you could make sure that, when you're importing products, that you can validate that it comes from a sustainable and responsibly sourced, mill or farm or cut and sew factory. The fourth one that everybody's talking about, this is one that I'm particularly passionate about because it's something that Lectra's been on the leading edge of for a long time, is having AI drive innovation. And, there's so many uses for artificial intelligence throughout every area that Lectra participates in, whether it's, planning the product life cycle through, pattern design for the garment that's going to be produced, whether it's making the production and the material usage more sustainable throughout the process. On the marketing side, whether it's predicting brand performance, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's benchmarking competitive trends, there's a lot of things that we could use to that we could leverage AI for, and that we have been really leaning into AI since 2007, since the Internet of Things kind of came to be, and we connected the cyber physical worlds, when our equipment first became connected to the internet. So that's one that we see really being a game changer for us and for the fashion marketplace. And then the other one, and this is more relevant than ever, particularly with the current trade environment, is the emergence of new geographies. And that's primarily on the production side. When you look at the business, the fashion manufacturing business, really starting in about 2017, 2018, we saw this shift away from China. A lot of it went to other parts of Asia, whether it was Vietnam or Cambodia. The nearshoring trend for those in the Americas was very real. I wouldn't say it was reshoring, but it was definitely a nearshoring where we saw, business grow in, the Dominican Republic and other islands in the Caribbean, Central America, Mexico. So, what other geographies are going to grow in this, as a result of this trade war and whatever trade agreements, get negotiated. there's going to be winners and losers, right? And at Lectra, what our responsibility is to make sure that both the brands and the manufacturers have the infrastructure and the tools to give them the agility and the flexibility to navigate this.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we are in the middle of, all these new tariffs and how are these going to play out. So as companies are moving these manufacturing facilities, what advice do you have for them? I mean, that's a big undertaking to move your manufacturing location.
It's a big undertaking, but the key is to have the data infrastructure that allows you to do it in a nimble way. So, I had mentioned before that there's a lot of areas of the value stream that we participate in. When you look at manufacturing, there's certain elements, right? You have the inception of an order, right? So you have an order. It could be coming from a brand. It could be coming directly from a retail outlet. If it's a customized order, you have that order being translated into, a production ready set of data. And that's, the patterns that are going to be actually produced and then sewn together. That's taking those patterns and putting them on a marker. What a marker is a series of patterns that are put together on the material in a way that maximizes your material usage. Then it goes into planning your production. Okay, what set of production ready files do I want to send to which location and when? And then it's monitoring that that production. And if you have that data thread set up, wherever that production is becomes a means to an end, right? So you could have somebody in New York City taking a look and saying, all right, I have some contractors in Vietnam, Mexico, and Dominican Republic. Where do I need to send these data based off of the ability of that contractor and the lead time? Or if I'm a vertically integrated manufacturer, I can have factories all over the world and say, you know what? Vietnam is going to have a 34% tariff. I know that we're still, in the middle of the USMCA exemption with Mexico. I'm going to shift that production to Mexico because you have that cloud-based data structure set up, and we have an enterprise solution called Valia that enables that. You can make that, you can maneuver those orders. Now, obviously, you have to have the material and the labor to support it, but at least from a data infrastructure standpoint, you have the agility and flexibility to be able to shift.
And then you mentioned AI, and of course, every company is looking at how they can harness AI and integrate AI. From your experience, what roadblocks do business leaders come up against when it comes to integrating AI tools?
I think, the biggest roadblock that leaders that we engage with is not knowing what's out there and not knowing where to start, right? I think that, as new generations of leadership that kind of grew up, hearing about AI come into leadership roles in the companies that we deal with, there's much more of an openness, but they don't know what's out there. And the reality is that a lot of the customers that we deal with don't realize that they've been leveraging, AI capabilities with systems that they've had for a long time. So for instance, you heard me mention early on that, we've been leaning into AI since we connected the first pieces of equipment on the cut room floor to the internet. Since 2007, we've been accumulating all of that data using machine learning. We're able to predict when we think our equipment that's on the factory floor is going to fail. So what will very often happen is, we'll have a machine learning algorithm that says, okay, if this motor is running hot for 3 days, we know that if it runs hot like that for 5 days, it's going to fail. We'll proactively ship a motor out, and a customer will say, hey, I just got this motor in. What's it for? Oh, well, we think it's going to fail based off of our machine learning algorithms. So we've been doing that for the last 18 years. So, that's machine learning AI, with generative AI, we use it in our cloud-based platforms on creating markers on our production planning algorithms. Those are all AI based. So there's a lot of things out there now that allows our customers to really ease into it in a way that is natural to their own workflow and processes.
Thanks for sharing. Those are some great use cases. What do you envision as AI is advancing very rapidly? What do you envision for the future of manufacturing with AI?
I think it's going to be, it's going to enable further automation down the value stream. right? So when you look at a typical factory that's cutting patterns and sewing garments together, they're automated up to a point. And that point is typically at the end of our line of cutters. At that point, it gets manually taken off the machine, manually kitted, and then brought off to sewing, right? So, could you leverage AI to, combine with, future automation technologies to bridge the gap between the end of the cutting line that's already automated and leverages AI to the finished garment for the consumer? I think that's where the puck is headed.
All right. So, with that being said, and I know we've been through industrial revolution before, but I know a lot of people are concerned about job losses. What advice do you have there?
There's two ways that I look at it. One is, artificial intelligence is creating a new type of job, right? And this is something that we've seen as we've gone through our own digital revolution as an organization internally, but also we see it with our customers where, the labor pool that's being brought into it is less, mechanical or less viewed as, hard labor than they are technology positions. So there's a shift there. The other piece of it is that, when you look at the workforce in the markets that we serve, in fashion, in automotive, in furniture, there's a workforce shortage. So our customers cannot replace the folks that are retiring. And it's just the nature of the work. So, one is creating a new type of job, and two, it's going to help offset the shortfall of workforce that we have as the workplace moves on in the markets that we serve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
Get started, right? Understand what's out there, because there's a lot of tools out there now that are light to implement, that you could be taking advantage of now, that are technology enabled, that could connect the dots throughout your process in manufacturing. So get started now. The tools are out there. Take a look and see what's available that fits your company and your process.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights.
Thanks a lot, Amanda.
All right. And thanks to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more.
Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm Lisa Martin, live from RSAC at Moscone West in San Francisco. We're going to be talking all things security all the way through Thursday. Some great content we've already filmed. Hopefully you've been watching. More great content coming your way. My next guest is Naomi Buckwalter. She's the Senior Director of Product Security at Contrast Security. Naomi, it's great to have you on Techstrong.
Lisa. It's good to be here.
Thank you for joining me.
I'm so excited. How are you today?
I'm excellent.
Awesome.
My feet don't hurt yet. It's day one. That's why I'm
wearing
heels.
I hope that is true
and
for the rest of it.
Me too.
Fantastic.
That's one thing at conferences you can guarantee: a ton of steps and sore feet.
And no lines in the women's room.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true. That's one plus for us girls. So I love the tagline at Contrast Security. You can't stop what you can't see. Tell the audience a little bit about Contrast Security. What is it that you guys are solving for customers?
Oh, interesting. Well, if I could give you an elevator pitch,
yes.
We do application security in production. That's the easiest way I can explain it.
I love that.
Right? It's so easy to understand. Yeah. Well, if you think about it, we have other things in security production things, like we have our CrowdStrikes that's running in production boxes, right? Okay. Like we have different agents that run in production. If you think about the vendor space, there's not a ton of application security happening in production, in runtime. A lot of it's before the runtime happens. So you've got your static scans, your SCAs, all the scans that happen in QA and dev and all the things that aren't actually production. Yeah. And you have to wonder why. It's kind of weird. It's weird.
Well, you were saying, that doing AppSec in production isn't crazy. It's smart.
It's so smart.
Why aren't more folks?
Wait, did you say that or did I say that?
I got that from
okay.
You.
So smart. You're smart. Actually, it is smart because
why aren't folks
it's where behavior happens. It's where the users are. It's where the attacks are. why aren't we doing more security where the bad stuff is happening?
Right.
Why do we assume we're testing for all the cases prior to releasing the thing in production?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you why. I know it's smart. We just said it. You said it. But I think it's because people are scared of doing AppSec in production. I think just in the past, we've had downtime as an issue. Your company is like, no, we need to have this uptime 99.999 or whatever, right, to 5.9 sync you. And I think it's put us back a lot. So if you think about some of the bigger breaches in the past, it really comes down to, you probably just had this old server running with an unpatched thing for the longest time. And you were afraid of taking it offline, off production, right, just to fix it and then put it back up. Because your business is like, no, we need all the uptime, we need all the revenue. And it becomes this problem because you don't have the protections that you actually need in production.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, and it's like nobody wants to be the next headline for a breach, so it makes sense. Right.
I know.
I mean, the brand reputation, the churn that happens, nobody wants to be that. I mean, in this day and age, security attacks aren't, is it going to happen to us? It's when?
Oh, it's happening
It's how
now.
often?
It's happening
It's
now.
what is the cost it's going to cost my business?
Right.
So that alone, you think would make enough sense for them to put apps like in production.
But I didn't even get to the biggest part. It's because we don't have the insight that we need in production, in our applications. We are really good as an industry of getting our network traffic understood, all the things that are happening on our hosts understood. We know all the things that are going on because we have observation, we have sensors in those areas. What we don't have are those same sensors happening in our applications at runtime, in production. And now we're trying to say as a company, I think it's time. It's okay to do AppSec in production. It's okay, guys. Like, I almost feel like here at RSA would be our unveiling.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
Our unveiling, like our unboxing for YouTubers.
Yeah.
So it would be our way of saying to the community, like, it's time. Shift left probably has failed.
Well, how much of what you're doing at Contrast is really education and making these folks aware that it's time, and this is why that old playbook has to be thrown out, because nobody wants to be the next headline.
And it's a little like pulling teeth. If we had like an interpretive dance, maybe people would probably understand it more. Because it's sometimes they're like, what are you talking about? I had a dinner yesterday with somebody at a different company, someone who does static scanning. And it's like when I told him we should do AppSec in production, it's like I stabbed his child. Like, his reaction to that was just like, oh, you could just tell his face. I was like, I'm sorry. Do I need to apologize right now? Like, he was just so insulted, the fact that I even said that. Because it's so ingrained.
It's cultural.
In us. Right.
It's behavioral.
Exactly.
And that's
hard
why to change.
Why?
But why? You're right.
Our critical thinking turns off whenever we are thrown another framework or another way of doing something. Oh, and everyone does it this way. Think of the thousands of other people here.
So I'm going to follow
that
that line.
Absolutely. It's a bias that is not well understood by me just because I can see the issues. And most of us in AppSec actually do. And here's another problem is security people traditionally don't have the best grasp of applications anyway. So what they do is, or what we do, is we kind of just say, hey, we're going to let the developers take care of it. We're going to do our scans. We're going to give them the issues, and then they're just going to magically fix it. That's not what the developers want to do, trust me. They want to build stuff fast. They want to make money. They want to go home and build cool shit at the end of the day. I'm sorry. They build cool shit and then call it a day. They see security people, and they always have, as a gate.
Yeah, gate.
As a detractor to what they're trying to do.
As a,
and
no, you can't do that.
Exactly. So what we're now saying is maybe that approach has failed us, because think of all the issues that are still happening. OWASP top 10 hasn't changed in like 2 decades, right? How embarrassing for us. Now we're saying application security can be done without the developers. We don't need them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know that sounds really like, who the heck are you, Karen?
Yeah.
But we haven't given this a shot enough to say that maybe it won't work, maybe it will. Why not? Right.
So you're in effect enabling the optimal developer experience, because you're pulling this out of their hands, and the AppSec folks can take the responsibility on in production.
Amazing. Do you have a newsletter? I want to sign up for your newsletter. That was
have a
really
podcast.
good. Yes, you do. Yeah.
So where are you talking? Who are you selling to? Is it the developers? Is it the security folks? Is it both? Is it the application owners?
Oh my gosh. Well, everyone and anyone who will write a check. But I will say we are targeting a new audience, and it's our SOC people, our security operations folks.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to sell them is more insight into the applications that are on their networks. Like all the applications and hosts that are on the machines that you care about. Run processes and things and accept traffic and do stuff with that traffic in your host that you should really know about, right? So we're giving them observations, more data, more insight into their application layer, into their APIs that they don't already have. And I think our SOC, what we're hearing from the fields is that, wow, this is great. Like before it was just another network packet. Like I don't know what this is doing. Now it's, wow, it's not only do I know where this packet is going, what route it's hitting, what that route is doing, what it's executing in the host, or what data point it's hitting on the back end, right? Like now that we have all that insight, we can do something about it. If it's an application attack, we can block it because Contrast does that really well. If it's a vulnerability that is out there, maybe we could tell the developers how to fix it. And we do that too. Not only do we block the attack, we can tell you where the vulnerability is, we can patch it, right? Like we have AI how to fix, like we have all these cool tools that can just tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, that application detection and response technologies observability are game changing for organizations. It's like the tagline that I like, you can't stop what you can't see. They need to have that visibility.
Yeah.
But also, in a sense, getting out of the way of the developers, letting them have the optimal developer experience that they want, that they expect. But providing that visibility so the blinders are off.
Absolutely. And you're letting them do their job better. And you're doing your job better too as security people. Security people can do application security. I know it's sometimes hard because we have to keep up with their technology. But once we do, we can show them we're on the same team. And then now you're building relationships. Now you're building culture on your teams. And trust. And that is 100% what you need when you're working with developers. Like I had conversations where like, why are we doing it with you guys? We can ruin your life if we want to. Like that is an adversarial relationship. Right? This is not a person that I worked with, but I was just talking. They're like, we can ruin security people's lives if we want to. Like, why are they so mean to us, right? Right.
Wow. What's your favorite customer story of Contrast that you think this just perfectly shines a spotlight on what we do well and why we're doing it?
Well, it's funny because I'm a security practitioner. I'm my favorite customer. I actually use Contrast every single day.
Awesome.
And
Drinking your own champagne.
Thank you. Oh, not the dog food thing?
No.
The champagne.
I like the champagne. I elevated it.
Thank you. It's so much better. Well, so I'm a security practitioner. I would not be working for a security vendor if I did not deeply believe in our products. I am not even saying that lightly. Like, I understand how cringe it is to be here. I'm sorry, RSA. I love you. But it is cringe. And I will say, it's just like LinkedIn. It's like, why are you so cringe? Why do you have to be this cringe? It's security vendors doing too much, and it's not actually helping do security. So me, as a security practitioner, really appreciates a tool like Contrast because it makes my job so much easier. I don't have to do a scan and be like, here's 500 vulnerabilities at the static, and I haven't even validated each one. Good luck with that, developers. Like I can give our developers actual vulnerabilities, actual vulnerable routes, things that have been exercised in our applications, which means endpoints that have been hit in production because we know this is a route that has been used and here's a vulnerability, here's an attack that happened, and then we could do something about it immediately. I don't have to wait for the patch. I can do something in our tool, Contrast, can be like, okay, we're gonna block this for now, and then gives us some time to patch on the developer side. And think about Log4Shell, it was the same way. We blocked Log4Shell out of the box before anyone even knew Log4Shell was a thing. And now it buys the developers time, right? Because you're like, you're using old versions of Log4j that are vulnerable to Log4Shell. Go ahead and fix this thing. And by the way, we have Contrast on the other side, acting as that last gate. Thank God we have them, you know?
You should be a developer's BFF.
I already am, Lisa. I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course you are. Naomi, it's been such a pleasure having you on Techstrong TV. Thank you for really explaining what you guys are doing so well, why AppSec in production is smart. We appreciate your insights and your candor as well.
Appreciate that.
For Naomi Buckwalter, I'm Lisa Martin. You're watching Techstrong TV live from RSAC. We'll join you again after a lunch break with our next guest, so stick around.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Platform Engineering Show. one of my favorite podcasts. It's one of my favorites because my co-host is my friend Luca Galante. Luca is in Sicily today. You know, part of doing this show is just to keep tabs on where Luca is in the world. So it's good to see you, Luca. How have you been, man?
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Alan. I'm great. Sicily, I'm probably gaining like a kilo a week, like solid.
Oh boy.
Yeah, like like
Really?
literally yesterday I went to like see this house that I'm checking out, and like literally next door there's this guy that's making fresh ricotta cheese, and it's like 9 a.m. and he's like, no, you should try. You need to try, and it's like it's still warm from the milk because it like milked the cow that morning, and it's like,
Oh,
no,
God.
you need to try. You need to try it right now. And so it just gives me like a spoon, and I'm just like 9 a.m. I'm eating like an entire ricotta cheese. And that's just like, it's like this, constantly, like people just come around. It's always food. People just just feed you all the time. It's the best food, but it's like, it's
Yes,
hard
it is.
to stay strict on the diet.
So I got to tell you, when we went to Sicily, and like you, I did a lot of, the street food in Palermo, just the arancini, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can live on those. But
Yes.
but yet we came home and we didn't gain any weight. Maybe it's because we were walking so much, but the food is so healthy there, especially you live in Europe, so you're used to that. In the US, our food is it's not all non-GMO. It's not all organic. It's not all as natural. It's a lot
It's
more
a lot
processed.
more poisoned. A lot more poisoned. Like I have a lot of friends. It's not the first time I hear this. I have a lot of friends in the US. Every time they come, right, there's like they come to Italy, same thing like you. It's like, man, I'm eating gelato all the time. I'm eating like all this pasta, which is all carbs, like pizza. Like, how is it that I'm losing weight? And it's just
It's the truth. It's, not only that, this isn't really anything to do with platform engineering, but I have friends who are like, here in the US, they're gluten intolerant. They don't have celiac, but they can't really handle gluten. But yet they go to Italy and they have, the good semolina pasta there.
Yeah.
They don't have any gluten problem with it. So it's something about the way the fertilizers they're using, the insecticides, something
entire
they're
supply
using.
chain. Yeah. Exactly.
It's true.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Mm.
Yep. Anyway, but we could talk about Italian food, but Stanley Tucci already did a great series on that.
I know.
Just
He's great.
him.
He's so great.
Yeah.
And it's like the way he does it is,
Absolutely. That's an amazing. My wife and I watch that over and over again. We make notes
really good
when we go visit. But we want to talk today about platform engineering, right? And we're at sort of a little intersection here. We just finished cloud native, which is a big platform engineering of, it's not all platform engineering, but platform engineering was a major player this year.
Yep.
I think it was the largest, not 0 day, they don't call it, but the mini conference day, with the like Tuesday of KubeCon week, they all have all those little conferences. I heard the platform engineering was the biggest one of the ones there. We've got PlatformCon coming up in just about 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. So much going on in this space, but there's also a lot going on with the evolution of platform engineering, right? Like everything else, I think in life is things go from simple and they get a little more complex, right? As you layer in stuff. And that's happening in platform engineering. You can't just be a platform engineer. Well, you can, but there's kind of specializations that are subspecials, popping up.
Yes.
Luca, you've got your thumb on the community. What are you seeing?
Yeah, exactly. I think you framed it really, really well. It's I think we're at an inflection point right now where, platform engineering is moving past kind of this core platform engineer persona, which first defined themselves as kind of like different from, DevOps, SRE, infra, cloud ops, right? And it's like, well, platform engineers, and we spoke about this before. It's a lot about this like product mindset and about, treating your customer, your developers as customers, and so on. And so that was kind of like the first step of like building, I think, this identity. I think the interesting thing that we're seeing in the community now is that it's that identities now start like growing and bifurcating into some more specialized identities, sub-identities, if you will, especially as platform engineering is really becoming this new DevOps, is really becoming this new kind of like enterprise IT layer that's sort of like sucking in people from all sorts of walks of life, from data engineers to observability people, security teams, and so on. And everybody, and we see like one of the fastest growing segments in the community is data engineers. And so clearly like people are trying to figure out, okay, what can this platform engineering thing do for me? And the other way around, it's like, okay, we are seeing top performing engineering organizations are already thinking of this as one unified layer of, data, because I think like in most organizations it's still very siloed of you have data and ML stuff over here. And of course, with all the AI craze that we talked about yesterday, it's growing very fast, but it's still kind of like in this bubble. And then there's all the, traditional kind of like infrastructure DevOps side of things over here, right? But of course, I think what we see is top performing orgs already think of it as just like one unified layer because, of course, why wouldn't you? It's just like all converging into the same thing, and kind of just like one platform that serves different types of users, from app devs to data scientists and MLIS users, all the way to eventually more abstracted, any business user, really, right? And so I think as part of that, people are trying to figure out, okay, how does, data engineering, for example, and platform engineering combine? And what we're seeing is the emergence of this like sub-specializations around data platform engineering and security platform engineering and DevX platform engineering, infrastructure platform engineering, and so on. And I think that's very, very interesting. And in fact, we're restructuring the way we sort of like organize the content from a community standpoint as well, along these lines of these different streams and these different personas.
I agree. But as we were talking off camera, I saw a similar development in the DevOps space over the years, right? Where you used to have, when it first started, everyone wanted to hire a DevOps engineer, even though no one really knew what was a DevOps engineer. Is that someone who worked on Chef and Puppet? Is that someone who did Jenkins? Or is, later on, was that someone doing GitOps? And then, like, as it matures, you start realizing it's very hard to be a jack of all trades, right? Master of none. There are specialties that you do. You mentioned security. So as a security person, it's always the same story. Sooner or later, security gets involved. Usually later than sooner, unfortunately.
Yes.
But you think security is coming in now and making an appearance in platform engineering?
Yeah. 100%, and we see people like Checkmarks and like I've been talking a lot to like ChainGuard and like a bunch of others that are like really looking at this and they're realizing, okay, platform teams are, from a vendor standpoint are, in most cases becoming like a core persona, and at the very least, they're like heavy influencers on the budget, right? Around this like security tooling. And I think, it's interesting because I've always thought that, to your point, security tends to get always involved, sometimes too late, often too late. And often it has this like blocking role, right? Of like, no, like actually we can't really do this, it's not secure, yada, yada. Which totally makes sense. I think the interesting thing that I've seen a lot of times when it comes to platform engineering is that when a platform is well designed, actually security teams not only don't block it, but actually they kind of like quickly become like champions in favor of it, because they're like, hold on a second. You're telling me that this, again, if we can get more into the details, but really, if you design a platform well with like a proper backend, really well thought out sort of, golden paths, effectively what you're doing is, developers can move faster, which is what everyone else finds sexy, without breaking things, which is what security teams find sexy. And so not only like, I think not only that, if you take that a step further, you realize that a well-designed platform actually is a sort of like automatic enforcing engine that drives security by design across your teams, across your workflows, and it really and it really benefits everybody that's involved. So I think that's the interesting thing of like the intersection of security and platform engineering, where really I think from the get-go, even like 2-3 years ago, before this like security platform engineer was a thing, or that's now starting to emerge, it already, I think, was a very natural fit. And now it's only getting more obvious, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned ChainGuard. I don't know if you saw, they announced today a $356 million D round.
Today.
Oh,
wow.
The day
That's
we're recording this. I don't even remember what date it is.
23rd of April.
April 23rd. April 23rd. $356 million round D. That's a huge amount of money in today's world. So clearly they're on to something there. But you mentioned that they're calling them security platform engineers, right? This has always been a problem that plagues security, is that the security people, security people deeply care about security, right? And we tend to create tools and processes that if you're a security person, it makes a lot of sense, right? We understand from a compliance point of view and from a best practices point of view why you do this.
Yes.
I think the problem we run into is whether we're talking about developers or DevOps people or ops people or maybe even platform engineers, they look at it and say, why? Why? You're just slowing things down. This makes no sense. I don't see the connection.
Yeah.
How are we bridging that in platform engineering, Luca? Is it by having the security people as a platform engineer? Is it by educating the platform engineers and they become security platform engineers? But the security people are, in other words, the security people aren't becoming platform engineers. The platform engineers are becoming more security aware.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great question. And exactly, like what we're seeing is like, as platform engineering is maturing and platform teams are maturing in their practice, they go beyond everything I care about is, building a delightful developer experience and making developer faster. But they start realizing, okay, what are the second, derivatives of this, right? Okay, I need to worry about, all the security. And of course, it's not like that they weren't thinking at all about it before, but they're maturing in their approach to it. And I think like a big part of that is also taking it step by step, right? Like as you roll out a first platform to your developers, and we talked before about the importance of minimum viable platforms and taking this like typical product management approach of like starting small, getting early wins, and then iterating from there. In the early phase, security usually is less important, and it should be, because if you need to make an MVP that's like ultra secure and ready to cover all the possible edge cases in production, you're not doing an MVP, and it's going to take you forever, right? So, and in general, like internal developer platforms at the beginning, when they're nascent, they're really focused more on dev and staging, right, as environments. Then as they mature, right, you get to production, and then of course you need to be, sort of like bulletproof and really solid on all security fronts, right? And I think to your point, yes, I think I really see this like sort of like double path, right? Like on the one hand is platform teams becoming more security aware and growing, and this is why we're now like, we see this emergence of the security platform engineering as a sub practice. And by the way, this might seem like esoteric terms that we just come up with, but like if you look at, for example, infrastructure platform engineering, which is slightly more established, right? It's been around for like 6 to 12 months top. It's already in 7 different hype cycles from Gartner, right? So these are things that like seem like small differences, but then they really become like established practices. And you're already starting to see a lot of people that are calling themselves DevX platform engineers and infrastructure platform engineers, because that's like 12 months ago, people started talking about it. Now we're starting to talk about reliability platform engineering and security platform engineering. I can guarantee you in 12 months from now, you'll see that on LinkedIn profiles, right? That's just like as a side note. But I think to answer your question, I think the other way that you see this conversion is honestly just by following best practice, right? So beyond just the maturation and the evolution of the people working in platform teams is also, well, like, look, actually, if you design a well-designed platform, right, which is beyond just like, hey, let me do like some front end, let me do now some LLM because it's the latest cool thing, and just plug it on top of the existing workflows, but actually design the platform from the ground up, which means starting from the back end and really have a well-designed back end with good business logic, good RBC, role-based access control, and all these things built in. Then you realize that actually security is again a second derivative, but it's a second derivative that's just automatically enforced by the platform by default, right? Across all these different workflows. And so I think those two things, like more awareness by the actual people doing platform engineering and then following best practice, is ultimately how you see security and platform engineering converging as disciplines.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Observability. I don't know if you saw this, but some folks are starting to reach out to us now. Observability is a thing, obviously, right? I mean, open telemetry, I think, is the second biggest CNCF project. There's a lot of buzz around observability. So observability, it's really becoming like a platform engineering, like DevOps, like SRE. It's becoming a singularity, if you will, right? Its own thing, not part of other things. But yet, as you know, it's to me, it's a part of DevOps. To me, it's a part of platform engineering. To me, it's a part of security, right? Yeah. How do you think that plays out, Luca? Specifically, the platform.
Yeah, observability is super interesting to me because for a few reasons. One, I totally agree with you. Like, I think it's clearly still just like a subset of, DevOps, platform engineering. And I think most people look at it that way. Yes, it's grown very, very fast. And, you have massive companies like Datadog and so on. Like, so clearly it's its own niche, but it's a very, very big niche. And, if you go to a place like KubeCon, probably the biggest booths out there are all like observability folks, right? So and security. So clearly, it has a very valid kind of niche. But I think specifically when it comes to platform engineering, it's very interesting because a huge part of platform engineering, what we've discussed before, has been this like front end thing, right? This idea of like, well, building a platform is just like building an application. You have a back end, you have a front end. And we've said before, right, like a lot of platform teams, I think, make the quick mistake of starting from the front end because it's a quick win. And then to figure out, okay, actually now I need to build all this thing. And what we just talked about with security, right? Like if you have like a well-designed platform, you start from the back end. That's all the security best practices go, all the configuration flows go on the infrastructure side and so on. But the observability is interesting because it's merging very clearly with this like front end layer of the platform, right? And so if we're thinking like portals, right? Like at the end of the day, when we're talking about like platform front ends, we're really talking about portals, right? Things like Backstage, which still has 95% plus market penetration when it comes to portals. They're really the only game in town. You know, but you know, what do you know? Like Datadog has now launched a portal, right? And there's some other observability vendors that are following suit very quickly. So and like, of course, it makes sense actually, right? Because again, you think of this like observability vendors that are like growing really fast, like we said, and they're like owning more and more things. Why wouldn't they own this sort of like portal layer on top of the platform, right? And I think that's another very, very interesting development that we're seeing that I think like we weren't really, you know, thinking about if you know, go back like 1 or 2 years. I think the vast majority of people are still not thinking about it, but it's happening. And you know, that's kind of like the work that we do in the community is trying to spot these trends and kind of like pinpoint them to people. And that's why there's going to be soon an update to the REFS architectures that have been such a, you know, essential part of the community of the platform engineering space and how people think and talk about the platforms that they're building to one another. And so we had this like REFS architectures 1.0, I'd say, that came at PlatformCon 23 2 years ago. And I think by the time PlatformCon 25 comes around in a couple of months, we're going to have the 2.0 version. And I think there's going to be some interesting updates, especially when it comes to the observability plane. So I'll keep it there.
I think we dropped the teaser right there. Yeah. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I've got one observation on observability. All right. I think AI is going to change what we think of as observability, and the players in observability and what we do in observability is going to get turned on its head with AI, with agentic AI, already with generative. I think it's really going to like have observability take off, right? Because you're going to be able to do so much more, so much easier.
Yeah.
And so I would start getting ready your ref architecture 3.0 AI version or something, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah,
look,
for sure.
Look, AI is going to do all of these.
The thing is as you know, with AI, for sure, we are seeing an acceleration across all these different things, right? Security is changing, observability is changing, platform is changing, the whole DevX layer is changing, right? And again, like they're merging because it's like, okay, you know, now a developer can not only self-serve infrastructure through an LLM, you know, and this type of stuff, but also can query the system. And so you have this whole like observability layer that's also built into the same interface. So yeah, I definitely see us just working harder and harder just to keep up with how the landscape changes and how best practices evolve accordingly. Yeah.
It's a crazy time, man. It's a crazy time.
Yeah.
Luca, we're about out of time. How long are you going to be in Sicily?
1 more month, I think.
Oh, yeah, you're there. So for our next show, you'll also be in Sicily. Enjoy it. Don't eat
I will be. Maybe I'll show up at Arancino. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be nice. The triangle ones.
Yeah, exactly. And I did mention PlatformCon, by the way. I think by the time this drops, we're gonna have the not so early bird that's gonna be about to expire at the end of April, and we will share like a special community code with the platformengineering.com and Techstrong community. So also stay tuned.
We'll have that out there, and this will air before the end of April. This will probably air. I'm gonna guess by the 24th, something like that.
Okay, perfect.
Well, no, the 25th maybe. Something like, or the following Monday, but we'll get it out there. Stay tuned for those codes. Luca, enjoy. Don't eat too much there. For now, this is another episode of the Platform Engineering Show. Bye-bye.